how it started, again, back to my mom, because she always had a lot of houseplants, taught me I should love houseplants too. You can see I have some houseplants. Um, and this is actually in the 1990s. And I discovered one of my houseplants had attacked and killed another houseplant. And I thought, well, I should have been paying more attention. It just looped itself around, starved it of light, and the other plant died. Then another plant, just a month later, tried to sink or root into another plant. And I thought, this is suspicious. And I started to do research and discovered that plants are just horrible. They attack each other. They kill each other without mercy. What they do to animals is sometimes unspeakable. Their plants are very active. They're very aggressive. They can do amazing things. And we don't notice because we're really fast and they're generally slow, although there are exceptions. And the more I learned about plants, the more, and I wrote a nice journalism article and got paid for the idea, but I was thinking, there's something really strange. And if I could wrap a story around the idea that plants are actually very capable and dangerous, very dangerous life forms, and thought about that more and more. I couldn't quite do it on Earth, but I thought if I got another planet, and if they could only just think. There's a big debate now. I mean seriously, almost bloody debate in botany right now. Can plants think? And, well, what do you mean by think? But they do seem to make decisions. They gather information and then act upon it. They communicate, but do they communicate strategically? Maybe. So can plants think? On Earth, well, not in a way that we can't cope with, at least I can say that. What if they were on another planet and they could think like us in the sense that they could plan ahead, they could be very strategic, they're tremendously aware of their environment, possibly more than we are. And if they could use all of that, and then use all of their other things, because they can make chemicals, they can make sense, they can kill animals, they can nurture animals, they can bribe animals, they have us trained to grow them as crops. They communicate with us. When a tomato turns red, it tells you something. It says, eat that tomato, because they want you to eat the tomato, and spread the seeds. And so what if they could all that, but they could think like us? So what if I made a planet where that would happen? And then humans showed up and they would be in the middle of all of these things that plants would be doing. And that's how it started. The Venus flytrap, yeah, that's a carnivorous plant, but you have to actually climb into that. But there's reasons why you might. There's others that will just loop around. This is called a sundew, and these are little glue, and you crawl on this, and then you get eaten. But there's many other ways that they do that. There's a very common weed called a shepherd's purse, and it's probably growing around your house because it's just everywhere. The seeds are protocarnivores. And what that means is that, so the seeds are in the ground and it's wet, and they release mucus, not mucus, mucilage, which is, plant glue. They can do a lot of things with mucilage. And they catch nematodes and small insects and kill them. They don't actually digest them. They can't do that. But as they break down in the soil, that's fertilizer for their seeds. So they're protocarnivores. They're very possibly in your lawn. And, well, then plant interaction is just enormous. I did a lot of research. I actually, in my library, they had a first edition of a Darwin book on plant motion. He was one of the first ones to document how plants can move. I didn't really need that. Well, I guess I use it later on. But I was just so excited to read that, so I did. And I'm still keeping up on what Botany is doing, because now that they have better tools, they can learn all sorts of things about what plants are doing. For example, they can use a radioactive isotope and see if that plant draws it up. If they do, where do they do it? What do they do with that? How are the leaves arranged? There's some research just won the Ig Nobel Award this year. The Ig Nobel Award is like the opposite of the Nobels. This was a guy. So there's a plant in South America that imitates the plants around it. It grows its leaves in their shape. How does it do that? That's not at all clear. Maybe it's catching some DNA or some sense or who knows what. So this one researcher thought, well, he would grow it next to a plastic plant. It imitated the plastic plant. Now, how did it do that? He thinks, because plants can see, at least they can sense light, that it was picking up on the shadows of the shape of the leaves somehow. Maybe, he's not sure. I read his paper. And he was delighted to get the Ig Nobel. But how does it do that? And what else are they doing that we just haven't noticed? Because there's a lot in botany that we haven't done, just because there's not enough botanists. There's a YouTube channel that I follow. It's called Crime Pays, Botany Doesn't. And it's this Chicago guy who swears like a stevedore. And this is the best effing ladies you're ever going to see. And look at this. He's great fun. Also wants you to kill your lawn. And he will give you careful instructions on how to do that and why you want to do that. But there's not enough botanists to really understand what we're looking at. So they're learning surprising things all the time just because no one's been looking. And it's not through anyone's fault. It's just we don't have enough eyes. Every time there's a chapter with a character called Higgins, and every time I read it, I cry because I do such horrible things to him. And I kill his babies. And I feel really bad about that. But what I also wanted to show was what plants can do. I joked that I want you to be afraid of your garden. And in a way, maybe you should be, but also for you to appreciate your garden more and understand that the plants around you are fighting for their lives and they have lots of tools and they can do things. And they interact with us in some very complicated ways. Another debate among botanists and anthropologists: did we domesticate wheat or did wheat domesticate us? Because when we started growing that and creating civilizations around wheat, we physically changed and the wheat physically changed. But look at it from the point of view of the wheat. They now control the Great Plains of the United States and many, many other parts of the world. They have won this fight from their point of view. So, yeah, I was trying to do both. People are scary, and we're used to that idea, but plants can be scary too. As much as I could, except for thinking, everything that the plants do in all three of the books, they can do now. And they are doing now. And they make all kinds of fruit, which has sometimes chemicals in it that tend to be good for us because they want us to eat that. But looking at other sorts of things they could do if they could just think a little bit harder. They make whole panoply of chemicals that interact with us. And some of them we really like, and we will do anything to get more of that. I mean, coffee. We love coffee. And so we're growing coffee all over the world now, other kinds of caffeinated beverages, but coffee is addictive. And so we're, like a planet addicted to this plant. And this is good for the coffee. One of the things I can't change about plants, no matter how hard I try, is that they are slow. And that's why in the first book, in Semiosis, there's jumps from generation to generation. So I could give the plants a chance to get up to speed and do what they needed to do. So when, interference comes about 200 years later, so that everyone could, the humans could get very used to the glass makers and the plants, and they could have a pretty good civilization going. And then these strange humans come, and then there's problems. And how would they cope with that, given now that there's some familiarity between some of the humans and some of the plants, some of the other aliens, and other considerations. And of course, I had the goal that Steveland, because Steveland is Steveland, if you don't know, is the rainbow bamboo, and they're the dominant species, very, very intelligent plant, very capable. But like all plants, Steveland is aggressive. Steveland wants to expand. And now that he knows that there's this other planet and he could grow there, he wants to get his seeds there. And in some ways, the whole book was designed to get those seeds on Earth, because that was Steveland's goal. And it's been his goal even in the first book. Once he learns there's another planet, he wants to get there, because that's what he does. One of the problems is that Steveland doesn't move. So I modeled him some. There's a tree called a pando. It's a quaking aspen. It's in Utah, and it's got roots go underground. And there's a tree, and then there's another tree, and then there's another tree, and there's like 40 acres of this tree, and it's just one tree. You walk through it, looks like a forest. You wouldn't know if there wasn't signs that there was anything strange going on there, but it's this one tree, and has been doing this for, I think, 40,000 years. Trees get old, they die, but then there's other ones, and so it's just one tree that just keeps reproducing. And there's other trees like that. He's just one. Pando is the big one, but there's other things like that all around. And so he can be in any places, but he can't move. I engineered a way for him to communicate directly with us, but honestly, it's some kind of shaky engineering. But he can do all of these things, and he's aware of all of these things. And so my question is, if he knows that there's a disaster going on over there, first of all, what can he do to mitigate that disaster? How can he tell other people about that? Plants use animals all the time to do things. How can he get animals to do that? How can he get other plants to do that? But without moving, being able to move. And it just took some thought. But he does fly an airplane. No spoilers, but he does fly an airplane. One difference between plants and animals is that if you or I have a problem, usually we solve that by going somewhere else. If I'm hungry, there's food in the other room. If I'm lonely, there's people over there. If I'm wet because it's outside and it's raining, I will go inside. If it's dangerous, I will run away. We solve our problems by going away. It doesn't solve the problem, but we're not in the problem anymore. Plants just have to sit there. They don't move. So they have to solve every problem you throw at them, or they die. If there's a drought, well, they have a plan. If it gets cold early, what are they going to do? How will they survive a winter? If an animal starts to come and eat them, how do they cope with that? And sometimes it's a good thing. Grass in the Great Plains. There's seeds of grass. How do they do that? Well, because the actual stems of the plants are underground, and then just the leaves come up. So buffalo come by and they eat the leaves, but they also eat everything that would compete against the grass, like weeds and seedlings for trees. And those things die, but the grass can just keep growing. So how do they cope with getting eaten? And maybe it's a good thing. They can use that to their advantage. So they solve all sorts of problems just by sitting there and doing what plants do. When we were on the planet Pax, there was just one rainbow bamboo. On the planet Earth, there's hundreds, thousands, maybe a million of them. And like any intelligent species, they quarrel, they don't get along, they can be mean to each other, they fight and get animals to be proxies in their fights, which they do here. And so they have their own society going, and then there's problems. And what are they going to do? How badly will these problems hurt them? And that's roughly the plot. Humans are in trouble, and then everybody's in trouble. And who's going to solve this problem? When I write, usually I know how it's going to end, by which I mean I know who's going to win, who's going to get what they're after. And I was doing the very first very rough draft, and there's 6 chapters, and I was writing the 6th chapter, and I'm going, well, I know it needs to end this way. How am I going to make that happen? Because this is like the last chapter. I'm running out of room. And then I realized the outcome that I wanted had already taken place in the previous chapter, but so subtly even I hadn't noticed. But the winners had won. And now I just had to make it a little bit more clear in the rewrites how that was going to happen. But yeah, there was a strange feeling going, I don't know what I'm doing right now, but I'm going to do it. I think I'm pretty much wrapped it up on Earth. But my question now is, so these plants are aggressive, like all plants, they want to go everywhere. So they come on to another planet. Now what? And how do they take over that planet? Because every plant wants to take over its environment. So they're going to try. They might not succeed. I don't know.
Say that again. I cut you off.
They're going to try to take over the planet. They might not succeed. I might not know until I'm writing the last chapter. But yeah, what would they do on yet another planet?